This is a story I recalled from college. As any college student is aware, textbooks have been a scam for a long time. Some professors use it to their advantage. In fact, one professor I had assigned 5 required books for his class, 4 of which he authored or co-authored, and he received royalties from them, and we barely used them. One of my favorite professors was fed up with the college textbook scam. He authored an engineering textbook, but was furious about the price that the bookstore was charging students. The publisher and the university owned most of the rights to the textbook, so he didn't have any control over the pricing or distribution. He did find one caveat to the publisher's contract. Even though he couldn't reproduce or distribute printed copies of the book or any of its contents, it didn't say anything about non-print content. So my professor hand-copied the entire text, including equations, graphs, and figures. He made copies of his handwritten textbook, and he passed them out at the beginning of class. We had to have it hole-punched and put it in a binder, but it was well worth the couple of $100 savings, and my professor got some revenge for the unethical practices of the college textbook publishers. I once had a job at a financial firm where we had around 200 salespeople. We were promised, and we earned, bonuses. The company was a financial service. This company was known for paying well, but one year they decided to withhold bonuses. Now, the money was referred to in all the paperwork as bonuses. However, it was a compensation based on a predetermined formula. You sell X amount, you get X amount bonus. You sell Y amount, you get Y amount bonus. It wasn't just one amount. It was set at different tiers. It was a predetermined formula in black and white. Everyone on the sales floor had a copy. If you didn't make your bonus, you knew exactly why, and by what amount you missed. The company had been around for 30 years by then, and was known for generous compensations, and had never played games with bonuses or payments. Until then. So this is what happened, and this is how we handled it. Now, the financial firm had about 1,800 employees. Like I said, I was in the sales force of about 200 people, and I was one of the salesmen. We had our annual meeting in April. It was a big affair. Most of the employees attended, and the CEO gave a big speech about how the previous year was the best in the company's history, and so on and so forth. The next month, May, we each submitted memos, basically justifying why we qualified, or should qualify, for the bonuses at the end of June. I wrote mine out and explained the sales growth in my territory over the course of the previous 12 months, and what percentage my sales were out of the last year's sales total, coming off the company's best year ever. It should have been a slam dunk, right? All of us was excited about how much we'd have coming in June. June rolls around, and my bonus was zero. But not just mine. It is all over the sales floor. Less than 20% of the sales force got bonuses. And holy crap, everyone was mad. All of the supervisors was dealing with angry subordinates. The sales manager was too. Even the VP and director of the company was facing a mutiny. It got worse when the supervisors were offered bonuses that could be determined for themselves. Most of them took them, but a couple, knowing that their subordinates wouldn't get anything, refused. My supervisor took his. When it came out, he tried to explain to his sales team how he felt it was justified and how hard he worked. He ended up with people screaming at him about how they felt the same, but they didn't get jack. So, for a week or so, the floor came to a stop, and a lot of people didn't show up, and the ones that did were angry. I came in, and I started reading Monster.com ads right at my desk. I also stopped selling anything or answering my phone. When confronted by my boss, I told him that as soon as I got my bonus that my sales justified, I'll start working again. Until then, I'll be coming in late, reading and responding to one ads, and leaving early. He could expect me to keep that up until I found another job or was fired. The following day, I was sent to the regional manager's sales office. She said she heard about my work stoppage and asked me to explain myself. I told her if she heard about it from my supervisor, then she should already know why I wasn't working, and I didn't need to explain it again. She tried buddying up to me, being friendly, then stern, Then, being angry, I kept my composure and I told her that the longer the company held out on my bonus, the longer it's going to miss out on sales. I then gave her my average daily amount of sales for the previous year, quantified what the total loss would be for a week of me not selling, and how much cheaper it would be just to pay me the money that I was owed and get me back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time and I told her I'll be leaving work as soon as I left her office. And I did. The following day I came in, I checked my emails, some of which was farewell emails from coworkers who quit over the stolen bonuses, and I sat there on monster.com until I was told to go to the office of the national sales manager. He's the gatekeeper. He's in charge of all 200 of us. He told me he understood why I was upset and could see why. I asked him if withholding the bonuses from 80% of his sales force was his idea or someone else's. He didn't answer. He did tell me that I would be getting a check on Monday and asked if I could please go back to work now. I told him that I'd be going back to my desk, but work wouldn't start until the check was in my hand. Then I went back and checked my email. Yep, more defections. The next day, an email went out for the entire sales floor. Management had looked at the numbers, reevaluated the financials, and determined that the June bonuses would be issued shortly. The email also apologized for the delay and reminded us that as salesmen, we were the core of the company and our hard work was appreciated. I received another email, this time from the national sales manager, who told me that while the bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd be walking my check to my desk the following day. The following day, I showed up, sat down, and shortly after, the national sales manager walked up to me and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him and I handed him my resignation, effective immediately. In my resignation letter, I requested that my check for my unused vacation time please be cut and given to me before I left the building. When he finished reading it, I told him I'd be cleaning out my desk while I waited. While I was doing that, one of my coworkers also resigned effective immediately. We were walked out at the same time and ended up getting drunk at the bar across the street. I learned later from the coworkers that remained that even though the company issued the bonuses, they lost 20% of their sales force the following 2 months. You gotta love corporate greed. A while ago, I used to work at a well-known general goods store. Not so long after the Great Recession of 2018, the management was trying to cut costs, cause a falling profit. One of the first things that management did was fire 2 of the 3 full-time maintenance cleaning guys. The one guy they kept, I'll call him MG, or maintenance guy. He did an amazing job. Everything in the store ran well because of him and his willingness to go above and beyond to help people. He was a genuinely nice guy. For 6 months, management tried to have it work, and it failed miserably. MG could not do everything, and over time, management increasingly asked him to coordinate some part-timers that were supposed to do cleaning and carts. He spent so much time coordinating that he had no time for maintenance. The night crew was also cut, so they couldn't pick up the slack. Then 2 things happened. Within a space of a week, after how management told him how important he was for the store to run well, some cleaning machines broke down. Turns out they have to be properly cleaned weekly. If left alone, they gum up really bad, and parts wear out quickly, and several thousands of dollars in repair bills because they told him to prioritize coordinating over tinkering with the machines. A few days later, the deli lady nearly quit after a blade on the deli slicer went flying past her face. Turns out that the bolt that held it in place was loose, and MG tightened it weekly for her. When he didn't have time, he told management that it needed to be replaced for safety. Well, management didn't do it because it cost money, but they told the people it was fixed. That could have been a lawsuit or criminal charges. They and the deli lady got lucky. So management sat down with him and asked him why things were going wrong. MG told them point blank that he needed enough time for maintenance, and someone else has to coordinate the part-time cleaners and also check up on them because they were rather lazy. Management called BS, and they said maintenance should be easy and done quickly. MG got mad because that insulted his professionalism, and he pulled out his notebook from his back pocket. It turns out that over the past 15 years, he had filled in the book with charts, schedules, and diagrams how to do his job and to keep things running. There were over 100 things that he checked weekly or monthly. There was a lot of machines that he kept in running order, some things that were half broken and had to be wiggled a certain way, etc. To be honest, a lot of these things were minor or major safety safety hazards. But over the years, management was fine not replacing multi-$1,000 machines if MG kept it going. As well, he'd done things that he shouldn't have done, like calibrating machines for departments that should have been done themselves or contracted out. But he was a nice guy, and he liked helping people. He told me that he spent a half an hour telling management what he did, and he suspected that until then, nobody had ever known how much he did. Well, he might have said a few swear words and derogatory things while telling management why he needed to do stuff. It was not a good moment for him, and he was mad. At the end, he put the notebook back in his pocket, and he offered to take a week to write up everything that he knew, so that management would have written proof as to why his job mattered, in case the higher-ups asked why they increased maintenance cost, and when corporate was demanding to cut cost. The multiple managers in the room looked at each other and asked him to leave, so they could talk in private. He told me, several years later, when I ran into him somewhere and had lunch with him, that he had a premonition, and he walked out of the room. So he went to the back room and tossed the notebook in the garbage compactor. For good measure, he then went around the store and emptied all the garbage cans and tossed those bags in. So his notebook was properly buried. He was fine with it because all the information was in his head. A few minutes later, management called him back. They told him that they couldn't allow him to keep working. That was because of the level of insubordination he showed. They said as soon as he surrendered his badge, box cutter, and notebook, he would be escorted out of the building by security. They basically treated him like a criminal. Most people who are fired are not escorted out unless they were suspected to commit a crime. He handed over his badge and box cutter. They asked for the notebook. He said he threw it in the compactor. Their eyes went wide, and they asked him why he threw it out. He said he thought he was going to write everything out, and he said he could do it from memory. He thought he was done with the notebook. At this point, management starts looking at each other worried because they had intended to take the book, fire him, and have a less subordinate part-timer who doesn't get expensive benefits like a full-timer. Now they couldn't. One of the managers suggested that he be allowed to write out the information just long enough to give them the info. Oh, how kind. He laughed at them and walked out, head held high, and management followed him to his car to make sure he left. I don't know the exact number. They lost a lot of money, having to replace all the equipment that was damaged. Over the past 15 years that MG worked there, the new guy they hired had a heck of a time trying to figure out how things worked. I asked him later if throwing out the notebook was illegal, but he said it was personal property, just to help him remember things. It was not a work-provided notebook. He was proud of what he did. For a couple of weeks, people did not show up because they was afraid to use stuff because of the crazy story circulating about the deli lady. He says that nobody questions his professional judgment anymore or implies that he's lazy. I agree. I'm not sure if this is petty or pro, but it certainly was creative and extremely funny at the time. I live in an apartment building that has end-to-end parking and has parking for 2 spaces per an apartment and has 5 levels. I only have a single car, and sometimes I let my friends park in the space in front of my car if they give me notice, so I generally park in the back. Plus, it's easier for my neighbors who has 2 cars. Earlier this year, a random car began parking in front of mine on Friday afternoons, meaning I couldn't get out with my car on Friday nights. Annoying, but not the biggest issue. Because I live super close to the city, this continued nearly for over 5 weeks. Every time I didn't park my car on the front bay, which I began doing. But times I planned to leave the space free for my friends, the car would appear again. I made repeated attempts to stop this behavior by leaving notes, which escalated into leaving printouts of a photo of his car and the license plate, and an explanation that if it happened again, I'd press charges or have his vehicle towed. Well, it happened again, and this time it was still there Saturday afternoon. I was planning to go out with a group of my mates. I guess someone went out Friday, got drunk, and decided to pick up the car later, not concerning themselves with the inconvenience it caused anyone else. It clearly hadn't moved, as my aggressive note was still under their wiper blades. I figured enough was enough. It was time to have that vehicle towed, so I called the building management, and eventually I called the towing company. They refused to help because the space place was on the 3rd floor, and they couldn't get any trucks up to that level because of the height and the space restrictions. Ordinarily, most people would pretty much be screwed at this point, and I will admit, I briefly considered sitting on the hood until this jerk came to pick it up while sending my mates on their way without me. But they would have had to work out a new arrangement for transport, as one car wouldn't cut it. Fortunately for me, my parents only live 30 minutes away, and they have a garage where I work on one of my cars. So I go to pick it up, and when I get there, I notice the vehicle positioning jacks. For anyone who doesn't know, the vehicle positioning jacks are basically devices that slot under each wheel that lifts the car up on hydraulics, so you can freely wheel it around in any direction. While I wasn't originally going to retrieve them, I took them out from under my project car and had a bright idea come into my head. None of my mates minded spending an extra hour screwing someone over that had interfered with our plans, so we grabbed the jacks, went back, propped up the car, wheeled it out. 6 guys can easily move around a small hatchback, so we pushed it across the level slowly and carefully to an area that there wasn't any parking, but it's a load supporting pillar with space enough for a car behind it, a little section of the garage that isn't lit, and completely out of the way. Typically, there's a guy on my level that parks a motorbike there, but he isn't meant to, and I doubted he minded. We dumped it in between the pillar and the wall, with the nose pointing towards the wall. I took back my angry note, the jacks, and left to enjoy my weekend. When we came back Monday afternoon, after a long weekend, the car was still there, which was no real surprise, considering there was only a foot of space for movement between the pillar and the car, and there's only a foot or so between the car and the wall. For the fact that the front wheels had been changed, we guess they tried to get it out, unsuccessfully. It eventually was moved a week later. I'm not exactly sure how they managed it, but I never saw the car again. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any stories you'd like to share, just send it to me. I'd love to look it over and see if I can use it. Unfortunately, I had to vet some of them. Some of it is pretty sad and probably a little bit too serious. Some of the neckbeards are actually very, very dangerous. I would recommend trying to avoid them. Some of them are pretty funny when it comes to the cringe, but people with that attitude, it could go a little bit too far, and you want to be careful. And I do really appreciate you sharing those stories with me. I'm going to be doing a neckbeard short next. Hope you guys enjoy it. It's just one story I got from Reddit, and I'm slowly going to be working on the subscriber stories, so I'm looking forward to having that ready for you. Till next time, be good, and remember, make fun of your failures, or they'll make fun of you.